Howdy. I'm here today just to have a bit of a chat, and I don't know. I just felt like talking instead of writing. Um, yeah, we're in a really interesting position, aren't we? Anyone who knows what's going on, uh, it's a challenging thing that we're all facing. Um, I'm just going to outline. Oh, I'm going to stop that squeal in the background because I always have the squeal and people don't appreciate the squeal. Let's get rid of the squeal. All right. I wanted to provide solutions for people today. I've had, yeah, I mean, I'm going pretty well. I've been sleeping well, which is great. Um, I did have a period of major issues for a time. But yeah, no, I've been getting 8 hours. Look, you can nearly see I've got sleeping eyes. And so, but essentially, yeah, I want to just give my angle on where we are in the world at this point. There's um there's a lot of people who are going through a lot of difficult shit. And I guess one of the main points I wanted to make today was this is humanity we're talking about. This isn't just targets. And I'm just going to outline what I think a target is again, because my perception and understanding on this has changed over time. It hasn't been consistent. And a lot of the stuff I've done has changed over time. And that's not surprising because of what we face. Because what we face, while it uses humans as nodes on the network in order to interact with us and for some of us to gang stalk and to do all kinds of weird shit, even if they're getting paid, they're still on the system. They're still a node on the network. That is, their minds are still in the network. The network can actually affect them. And so the level of what we're facing primarily comes from an all-knowing AI that knows all of our actions, our moves, what motivates us, what makes us angry, what makes us sad, what makes us happy, and all of that stuff. And so essentially what we're fighting isn't those people that it's weaponized against us. Even if the systems put people onto you, the police, the local criminals, the fusion centers, your family, your kids, your parents, whoever's been turned against you, or and they appear to be part of a big conspiracy. I'd suggest that the system's very clever at making that appear more black and white than it actually is. There's a lot more subtlety to it. And I keep trying to tell people, we need to realize that even those who are pitted against us have actually been taken by a horrible system that is has been given the directive to take people's minds, to manage society. They want a self-managing society. You see, this has been the vision all along. And so the best way to police people is to get them to police themselves. And that's what we're seeing with all this interaction and what people call gang stalking and all these other foul actions. Um, and so it becomes paramount that we recognize that we are all being affected by this system. And that's why, I've focused in my writing, some of my best stuff has been focused on solutions that really try and tackle this issue. So let's talk about like the psychological methods that are used. I've done my methods of mind control article. I'm not sure whether all of you saw it or not. I'm not sure how many people saw it, but like subliminal messages, for example, I've proven that they exist. Ask. Look out for Charlie, like he's proven it for years. Like this isn't new. So what does it tell us? It tells us that they've been able to put voices into people's heads, whether conscious or unconscious voices, right? For a very long time. At what scale? Well, that's a point to be argued one way or another. But I'd suggest it's been happening for at least 20 years. And indeed, I know people who have had V2K playing in their head 24/7 for over 30 years. And so let's think about what we thought was reality before we started to become targeted. Just think about what the machine could have been doing to your head or to anyone else's head around us in the time leading up to that conscious targeting. And then think of an AI making the decisions of this. Like, why did you get targeted? Why did the machine make itself known to you? And it didn't make itself known to you as a machine, did it? Mine didn't. Mine tried to make it sound like it was my neighbors doing it. So what does that tell you about what the machine wanted me to believe? And I've even recorded it playing the subliminals that I can't consciously hear. That is stuff going into my subconscious saying it's your neighbors. What does the machine want to achieve? Let's look at the evidence. I've got the evidence. I can show it to you. I can play it to you. I recorded the voices in my head. Look up that video. Let's just look at the evidence. So it's saying it's your neighbors. It wants me to think it's my neighbors. It's played their voices into my head saying things over the fence, and I know it's not them. So what was it trying to achieve? Well, first of all, it knows that if it starts playing conscious voices in anyone's head, that they're going to look like they're crazy. They're going to speak to someone. They're going to say to someone, hey, I'm hearing voices. And the first thing that person's going to go is like, oh, that's concerning. This person's crazy. And then why the neighbors? Well, they want us to lash out. Because what if I go, it's my neighbors, and then the person's going to go, people around you are just going to go, they're not doing that. Or they're going to go, really? Oh, that's, and then what are you going to do? You're going to go and knock on their door and then they're going to report you to the police. Problem solved. What are they trying to achieve? They're trying to get you incarcerated. They're trying to get you to look crazy. Why you? Because you didn't assimilate to the system. Let's go through this. What if they're playing this into everyone's head subconsciously, and some people took on the subconscious? Do you ever have those thoughts that popped into your head and they're just like, ugh, and you reject it, right? Because you've got values. Because you're not easily led. Because you know who you are. Right? I noticed it going back years ago. I was sitting on the step in the morning, beautiful blue sky before the chemtrails all started. And I was having a cigarette. And the first drag of that cigarette, my mind went from positive to negative. Why? Well, when the oxygen drops in your body and your brain isn't firing quite well on its own because you've just breathed in all that toxin, then that machine that they would have been running maybe lighter than they do today, because I reckon they've ramped all that shit up and they've probably gotten better at doing it. It was able to get in with a little thought. And the thought was, like start thinking bad about that person. Oh, your friend, your house living with housemates, they're doing this, or, it's like it puts seeds doubts, right? It wants to create conflict. It wants to create division. It wants to separate us. It's only interested in separating us. It makes the phone ring when I'm in the middle of a talk, It can do a whole lot of amazing things just through suggestion. There are people who are nodes on the network, and they are just fantastically suggestible. Some might say that some of these people have lost the capacity to have their own thoughts. That is, they're just allowing the machine to speak into their head, which means they no longer are themselves. I think there is it's not black and white. It's not everyone's controlled. It's not everyone's not controlled. It's that there are people out there who are very controlled, and there's some that are more controllable at certain times, when they're vulnerable, when they're weak, when they're sleeping, like all of us. We're all vulnerable while we're sleeping. Why do you think they use that as the opportunity to plant seeds and false memories and all kinds of little stories in our head that are always designed to wear us down? All right? These little dream sequences where our fears in our everyday, and there's that phone, someone's very persistent at the moment, see? Our fears of our everyday fears are replayed to us in real time, like in a circumstance. And that's what I get in my dreams, all these things. And then they might do your lusts, they might do your, but basically they are playing on emotion. They are playing on your emotion. They plan to wear you down through those interactions. So you face all this opposition during your waking hours, and then you again face it when you go to sleep. Targets are targets because they were strong, because maybe they were test subjects, maybe that's it, maybe they're trying out different things on them, maybe they didn't like them, maybe they want to wear us down and have us kill ourselves, maybe they are testing various technologies on different ones. I don't know. What I do know is that what we're facing is a combination of elements within the body and EMF. Right? I don't think there's any need for scalar. It's all explainable through our common frequencies that are used. I've been doing more research on Armando's work, who's done amazing work with Silent Night, and there's many who will vouch for him. I've been looking into how to easily and cheaply develop something along the same lines. Because I was hoping to share that as a specification for people. And so I do intend to do that in the process of doing that. In the meantime, I actually created something that is for those people who have signal generators, especially the Tiny SA or the Tiny SA Ultra. I created a little program that basically throws out a radio frequency noise, but it can't do the same as a spark gap, which throws out noise across all bands. It can only do sort of one band at a time, because it's not, and it's a set sort of band. Like it might do 10 megahertz or something, and then just jumps from one to another, right? And so I can show you that now. I'll turn on my presentation mode and get this up. Yeah. And I want this thing here. Where are you? Yep, this one. Okay, where's my picture in picture? Yeah, so what we've got here, as you can see, is... So my head's in the way a bit. But this is megahertz here. I don't know if I can make that easier for you to see. No, I can't really. Hang on. If I do that, actually, I should be able to do that. Yeah. Oh, no, it still puts it in the center. Essentially, I'll just do it like this. Essentially, what it's doing is this is megahertz along here. So I'm casting through this range, 300 to 1.4 gigahertz, so 300 megahertz, and with 14 megahertz bands. And see, it just randomly generates a signal, and it's trying to do 0.13, 130 milliseconds between each. And what I found is attacks like the one that I get in the back and the neck. I was getting this pinch in the neck. So stabbing attacks, they can still get through with this. But the stuff that's like persistent, the ones that are really annoying, for me, it's all the persistent ones that are extremely annoying. Like a pain in the shoulder that just won't go away and it just persists and it's very debilitating. That kind of shit I can break with this. So it just weakens it. You hit it when the pulse hits the right frequency that they're using or around it, it interferes with their interference patterns, which I think they use. They cross over beams through beam steering. And when they all congeal at the right point, which is you, right, that's when you get that effect, right? And there's also elements in the body. For me, those elements have been created through infection, through a bacterial infection, which is the same infection as Lyme disease, which creates piezoelectric strands coming out of the body, right? This is why Lyme disease patients and Morgellons and all that, they're all called crazy, even though they've got very clear symptoms. And so, yeah. And so, yeah, this is, anyway, this is a little program I wrote and it's working brilliantly. It basically pauses every 100 hits. It does 100 hits and then pauses for 2 seconds. It's like still running a lot of, what do you call it? It's running a lot of RF. And so I wouldn't like to run it all the time. But when you're in need, when you're in need, it's a great thing, It's something that that gives you some relief. And so, yeah, I'll put the link of that down below. If people have this, they need to just sort of understand how to pull it tells you how to run it and stuff. It's quite easy. If you know Python or something, or even just can do a couple of command lines, it'll run on Mac, it'll run on Windows, and it'll run on Linux as well, which is what I'm running on. And so, yeah, I found it useful. And yeah, this is the frequencies I'm using. As I said, all those attacks, they're coming in on the radio spectrum, right? Because I'm able to interfere with them. So, what this is doing that's different to something like what Amando's done, which is like he's done a spark gap. The spark gap produces noise across all those bands. So see how this is all the bands and it's hitting at one point at a time. A spark gap basically produces sound like noise across all of these, and it's random up and down noise like this. It's very effective. It's analog versus digital. This is digital where it's broken up into little parts, whereas a spark gap's basically raising the noise across all channels at the same time, and it's much wider as well. It'll do everything from 100 kilohertz right up to over six gigahertz if it's done correctly. And so, yeah, I recommend that people look into that for those who are wondering whether we need to do that. I mean, whether that's a solution, and it is a solution. It's an excellent solution, and so I'd recommend his work. For called the Silent Night with a K, the Silent Night, like Knights of the Round Table. And that's one thing. The other thing I wanted to highlight today was basically an old article of mine, which I've always pushed this the most out of everything. Let me just stop this. Yeah, so, beating mind control by harnessing subconscious programming. I strongly recommend people have a look at this. If you haven't already seen it. Again, very old one from March 2005, but it still stands today, as it did back then, and has some excellent information in managing what a lot of people are facing without even realizing. I think a lot of people, like especially targets, I think there's a lot that they're so focused on, because a lot of people get a lot of dialogue in the V2K and they can't get past the fact that V2K, even when it's not talking, or whenever it's, even if it's not talking, you've still got this subliminals, and particularly during sleep and stuff, they would definitely take advantage of that. I just can't see that they would be doing what they're doing to people without the subliminal side of it being used. And because of that, I highly recommend that people take that very seriously. What, and that's what the article explains. If you've got someone writing into your subconscious, which is essentially what subliminals do, then you need to protect that subconscious by actually replacing it with positive reinforcement instead of negative reinforcement. And so I highly recommend that people, do basically come up with your own affirmations and make sure that you can replace what it is that they're doing to us. And so the article teaches you how to do silent subliminals, which I use 24/7. In fact, they're playing right now. And so full disclosure there, you've all been listening to positive reinforcement as you've been listening to me rattle on at the same time. And so that's handy for people. And so I'd highly recommend, though, that people take that seriously. It's a step that everyone can take. It's not that hard to do. And whenever at least you're at home, you can have something playing on a speaker that you can't hear, no one else can hear, but it's positive and it's lifting you and it's allowing you to protect your mind and it's keeping you in touch with yourself, and I think that's helped me endlessly. Like I've noticed the difference when I don't have that playing for a time as when I do, and that is it. The machine very quickly makes you spiral downward, and so that's also heightened by stuff like sleep deprivation and different attacks. And if you're getting like people screwing with you and stuff, then of course that's gonna all play into that. But I'd very strongly recommend people take that seriously and spend the time. It doesn't take that much time. You can spend half an hour, write a script, drop it down into a script to where you got a script and you make it text to speech, and then run it through Audacity to make it silent. Very easy steps, all documented in that in that particular one. So have a look at that. And then so where are we going from there? So we've got the elements in our body, right? And we've got the frequency. So I addressed the frequency earlier, the elements in our body. Now I think, I wanted to just give you my theory on this. It's again, I've always been like, I've explored all angles like all of us do, and there's a lot of material out there, and there's possibly many techniques being used in order to achieve what they're achieving. But I've found the connection personally between the sensations I get on my skin, especially on the skin and under the skin, and the condition that I found where I've got strands coming down my skin. Now, is it a bacterial thing? Is it a viral vector somehow that infects the cells like mRNA and then expresses out of the cells? Is it nanotech building stuff out of the resources in your body? It doesn't really matter. The fact of the matter is that every person who has, this is why I wanted people to get their microscopes out and actually test their own skin. But every person I know who's ever tested it, who's actually taken the time, and there hasn't been that many, mind you, because most people, it's hard to get used to do anything. And you have to drop the money on a microscope. You don't need an expensive one, $150, and you've got yourself a microscope that you can use for all these different purposes, which I think is important these days. I have found there's no one who's come back to me and said, yes, I tested it and there was nothing there. And so I'd love to just hear at least one person say that. But I don't. I think if you're targeted, it's very likely that that's not going to happen. So let me give you
my summary on what I'm thinking. So without understanding that and then trying to decode what's happening to people targeting, then you're missing a very large piece of the puzzle. EMF plus elements in the body equals your sensations. What are the elements in the body? Well, they don't even have to be metal. They don't have to be carbon. They could just be piezoelectric. They could be made of collagen. They could be made of keratin, the same stuff as our hair and our skin is made of, right? And they exhibit very highly not highly, not as much as like something custom made for it, but elements. They can produce elements that are very much reactive to EMF, and they'll produce a current when they are flexed or when they're moved, and they will move when you apply a current. So how can you apply a current? Well, you can do it through the air. You can do it through targeted EMF. Okay, so that's important. What else I was going to show you, just to drive that home. So this is my notes platform, or my research, excuse me, is in here. I'm just going to look for, oh yeah, this is the one here, my analysis, which I may have shown a few people. I might just grab this link, a public link, and drive it from there. So I get this sensation in the top of my neck, and I recently did a little interview from people. And it's a tingling sensation. It's kind of like a crawling, tingling, electrical sensation right where the spine meets the neck. And it goes down around the shoulder as well. So it's all in this patch. And I've started so I'm going on the theory that this is all bacterial. And this is why, because I've looked at the evidence. What can produce these strands? What will our authorities not acknowledge as being real? Like Morgellons disease, like Lyme disease. Lyme disease, the associated bacteria, is Borrelia burgdorferi, which is a bacteria founded by a guy who happened to be working on biological weapons, and who happened to also work on weaponizing arthropods, namely ticks, back in the late 60s. Now, that sounds sus already, doesn't it? And so you've got to just look at these things as they are. I mean, let's have a look at this thing. This here, in this area where I was getting these sensations, I pulled this thing out. This was let me just make it a bit bigger. This was 2 millimeters long, this thing. I might just download. It's a pleasant looking thing, isn't it? It looks like a bloody sausage with pointy teeth on each end. And as you see, that's transparent, right? This is built out of my body, right? Yeah. It's a pretty disgusting looking thing. But I pulled that out of my body, and let's have a look. Let's keep going. So I asked Claude about it, and it gave me an analysis. It said it's a biofilm marker. Now, what's a biofilm? Something that's produced often by bacteria, right? That then it produces layers and layers of stuff out of itself. It builds itself a little fortress, So Burgdorferi variety will build keratin and collagen, layers and layers, and it'll come up on your skin as little lumps or weird things, and you'll rub them and they'll give this sort of greasy texture. This is what I've been getting, like in certain areas. And since I've been treating with the right natural remedies, because I haven't gone into the full antibiotics angle yet, because I don't know I'm still figuring out the best way to approach the doctor about it, because here in Australia, Lyme disease is not recognised, and Morgellons will get you a psychological assessment. And even Lyme disease will get you a psychological assessment if you push too hard. So you've got to be clever about how you approach these things. Biofilm, though, won't. So that's one way that you can approach it. Don't mention Lyme but Yeah, so I went through this, and these are others that I found, and this is the funny bit. This is the genesis. So when I showed it this thing, because I pulled one of this out of my skin as well. And what does it look like? It looks like those fibers, right? It looks exactly like the fibers I find on my skin all the time, which often just look like these little strands. But this is a bundle of them, and it seems to have formed this shape that looks exactly like the same sort of shape that this is. So what is this? Well, the AI suggested to me that this is a genesis, that is the early stage of this, and this is the later stage of this. So it starts off as bundles and strands, and it wraps itself around, and then it crystallizes and eventually forms this. And this is another form of the similar thing here, where it's opened up, and you can see there's strands in this. There's strands coming out in this part and here, over here. And so, yeah, they're pretty disgusting. And it said this yellow is how it encases it, and inside there, that bacteria will be protected in there, and that's why it's hard to treat these sort of conditions, because antibiotics go through the blood, but they won't do the surface of the dermis of the skin where they've got these biofilm elements where it's all coagulated minerals, which is what this is, and that's what this is. It's coagulated these minerals and formed into this very resilient structure. And it's using iron and all kinds of stuff. Now, these here, I imagine this would act very well as a piezoelectric element, which means you could, if pressure is applied, you could produce electricity from it. And if you add electricity to it, like EMF, then it could actually vibrate. And I imagine that I have many of these, and I've been, rubbing my back with oil and stuff, and often these little things will come out, these little buggers. 1 millimeter, tiny little, tiny little, they just look like a speck on your finger, but you put them under the microscope and they're these well-formed, hard, like a splinter under the skin, and you just sort of pick them out and they come out and they're like, wow, where'd that come from? I don't have these all over me, but I'm definitely in those areas that I've got sensations. I'm finding evidence that these are related to it. I'm also pulling a heap of strands, mind you. And that's where they begin, in this strand-like form. And then they eventually form into these hardened structures, which cause a lot of discomfort. So I don't know whether that's the same for everyone. I think different people have got different things. But imagine, why would they use a bacteria as opposed to nano? And why would they make people think it was nano when it wasn't nano? It's just like, here's the advantage. These grow. If this bacteria is in you, one, it's just going to grow through your body while it's untreated. So what's that mean? Two, piezoelectric elements being grown within your body. They're just going to grow. They're just going to form. They don't have to top them up. They don't have to give you another booster. They're just going to grow and grow and grow. And they'll go up into your blood. They'll eventually get into your blood and into your bloodstream, into your organs. It'll eventually go into your bones. It'll go into your joints. It'll go into your brain. That's right. The spores from a bacteria, whatever you call them, right? They'll go into your brain. All right. And if it's growing these strands into your brain, then they've got piezoelectric elements in the brain. They could, they could probably induce electric current up there, or they could possibly, activate elements, activate areas in the brain. But I mean, I personally think the brain stuff is probably more likely done through other mechanisms, especially if people are jabbed. And so I think there are multiple mechanisms being used. But on the body, when it comes to, like, not everyone's walking around feeling these sensations that a lot of us are. So what if the difference between, say, someone who's jabbed and head full of graphene, they're being read and easily controlled through that mechanism, and then us targets who are getting body sensations, maybe we're all infected with this. That's what I want to establish, like, And this will quite happily sit in the body for without really any you can't tell I've got this until you get a microscope out, and then I can do it with a single wipe. One of these wiped over the area. If I do it now, I can make this go black if I wipe enough of my area of my neck. There we are. And I'm showered right last night. I haven't been out in the dirt, and it's already covered in brown. Now, if I put that under the microscope, what are you going to see? Well, I don't think I can show that to you because I haven't got it in this window. I'd have to change that over. What are we going to see? What do we see? Let me just check back. I don't think I've put any into here though. Yeah, no, I don't think I have. Well, you've seen my photos and my videos. We see a lot of strands is what we see. We'll see a lot of strands. Let's just grab some. I'll just grab some pictures and microscope. Actually, video. There's some recent ones. What do we see? We see stuff like this. Loading, loading, loading. Oh, I put a video in there. Whoops. Okay. I thought it was an image. All right, well, I may as well use it. Let's have a look. And so what's that look like? So, I mean, that's gross, right? That looks like magnetite nearly, this part here. But these strands, right? That's the common bit. And they are through everything. Look at this. That's just from wiping off my neck, right? And I can wipe and wipe and wipe and wipe and wipe. Like I can completely shower and then come out and still wipe and get some of these off. Why? Because they're coming out from under the skin. They're grown under the skin and you push them out. If they stay there and they bundle up like I've shown you, then what we end up with these calcified elements, these elements that are in fact piezoelectric elements. Here's a wipe of let me try and find another one. Yeah, this is a good one for size. Chuck this in here. Yeah. So that's a matchstick head, and as you can see all over it is these fibers, right? Collagen and keratin. This is all they are. They are made of the same elements as your hair or your nails. The bacteria just harvests it and pumps it out in these strands, right? Now, is there a magnetite element? Maybe there is. Bacteria can also produce magnetite, yeah. All right, so I'm still treating myself over the last few weeks to try and reduce my symptoms and reduce the strands, and I'm finding, yes, the oregano oil, cloves as a tablet and a capsule, and what's the other one? Cloves, oregano, and cinnamon bark, all caps. And yeah, all of those are really excellent antimicrobial. And in fact, there were studies that showed that even some of these hardcore antibiotics performed worse than having these three as a combination in terms of an antibiotic. Now, you can't take them indefinitely, but you take them for a course of 12 weeks. So, and I've noticed a reduction, and I've noticed areas on my body where I had little scabs that weren't healing, they're healing now. And so I honestly think that's what I'm dealing with is a bacterial infection. And it is something along these lines, that one of the ones that if you generally go out to your doctor and say, I've got it, they'll put you down as a parasitic delusional person, which to me highlights a systemic mechanism to prevent true knowledge of what is actually happening. This is a weaponized bacteria. Anyway, I don't want to get hung up on that. I just wanted to get that out again because I'm not sure if people understand it and the implications of that. Because what it's saying is, okay, if these elements are what's helping to cause the sensations in our body, and these elements are being produced by bacteria, and the bacteria is treatable, then removing the bacterial infection, number one, should be our priority. Number two, from there, is removing the elements that it's built. So that's your biofilms and all those structures. So it's a 1-2 punch. DMSO will help you get rid of the stuff on the surface. It breaks, like I get this hard build up again in each year, 1, 2, both in different parts. And I put DMSO on that and it dissolves down to nearly nothing. And you just massage it in 70%, put it straight on the skin, massage it in, massage it in, massage it in, and it disappears. If you then treat that also with an antimicrobial, like oregano oil or cinnamon oil is another one. They're very burny, by the way, so be careful using them on the skin. You want them watered down with some other oil generally. And yeah, that helps those oils get in there, and that will kill off the bacteria. So I've had some. I need to be treating these more commonly, but I ran out of DMSO, reordered it, and I got a contaminated specimen from a certain company that I won't mention yet, but they're ignoring my requests for them to actually give my money back for that because I'm not happy with them. And I wonder about that because that brought me to another thing that's occurred here in Australia, and the fact that DMSO is a very special substance. All you need to do is go to a website like this. So this is dmso.com.au. I'm not sure if this was where I found this, but the FAQ on here is always, it's very telling. What is it? Yeah, so they don't cover it on here. No, it was a different place where I found it. What I actually investigated was the legal standing of DMSO, and I can tell you just off the top of my head, it might be odor characteristics. I can just tell you off the top of my head. Here in Australia, DMSO is not allowed to be used for therapeutic purposes without a prescription. And getting a prescription, you're going to get yourself like a 100ml bottle or something, right? Which is nothing. And so they don't want people to have DMSO that they can use therapeutically. And so you've got these companies that are selling them, like where I was getting a bottle like this. And the first lot I got was fantastic. The second one I opened up and it stunk. And it's not meant to stink. Good, pure DMSO does have a smell. It has a garlic-like odor, especially when applied, and you'll get a bit of a smell from it. This smells like the new one I got of this from the same company I got it the first time. Completely different smell. Completely ponged, like it was sewer water. And so I don't know if it got contaminated along the way, or whether the company can't get a good source, or because this regulation came in 2005 or 2006, they basically said that you're not allowed to use it therapeutically. Why? Because it's effective. People are using it for all kinds of amazing things, and people should investigate that and have a look at what it's been told to be good for. But it definitely breaks down biofilms produced by bacteria, and this is a main issue with a lot of people. So all those weird little bumps that you might be getting, DMSO is actually the thing to get rid of them. And it's antimicrobial as well. It'll help any antimicrobial sort of substance soak into the skin and really get into the core. And so when you're treating yourself from the inside, whether that's, what do you call them? Whether that's antibiotics or whether that's through a natural variants like your organic oregano oil, or whether it's your cinnamon bark tablets or cloves, all great. I'm taking all three at the moment, and yeah, I'm noticing differences. I'm noticing real differences. Yeah. So that's cool. But yeah, DMSO. So I'm trying to get myself some more of that isn't contaminated. If it's been contaminated along the way, then I suspect going through another vendor isn't going to isn't going to yield me any better. But it's put people legally in a position where they can't advertise it as pharmaceutical grade DMSO, so it has to be marketed as a solvent. So they can still sell it to you, but they're not allowed to say it's good quality, which means they can send it to you as shit quality. So it's basically given people who want to sell it and make an extra buck, and they can hide behind the fact that the law doesn't require them to supply you pharmaceutical grade DMSO. If they say it's pharmaceutical grade, then they can get fined. So there's a picture of a law that's been created in order to stop a product from being accessible to the average person. For what purpose? Because it's effective. See, this is how regulation is currently used in this day and age. It's not to help us; it's to hinder us. Unfortunately, yeah, that means that it leaves us with little recourse when something like what I just had happen, right? And they're like, "Well, we said it was not pharmaceutical. We said it was industrial." It's like, well, yeah, but like you implied that it's good for this or good for that. People expect it to be a certain level of quality, but it's like, well, you got no legs to stand on. It's not for pharmaceutical. That's what you've bought it for. So we're just going to give you sewer water because it can only be used for industrial reasons. Anyway, uh, so anyway, this is a bit of a mixed bag. This one, I might just jump out of this. Yeah, and so where do I go from here? I think I've spoken too long anyway. I might just leave it at that. Um, yeah, thanks for watching, and I'm sure I'll chat with you soon. All right, out.